I've only worked 3 months this year.
Okay. Go ahead and just give me a summary of that entire text thread, as we call it, from start to finish, your recollection of it.
Okay, basically, he asked me if I received my training in emergency vehicle operations. I said no. He said, "You want to make a deal? I'll sign off on you if you'll sign off on me." I replied, "No, Nate would fire us both." And then I gave him an option that would have to get approval because of the policies that we have in place for it to be all hands-on or majority of it hands-on. I told him that there was a set of DVDs for visual aids for training, and told him that he could talk to the chief or the sergeant and make arrangements with them to obtain further training.
This is tab number 2 of the binders. I'm handing you what's marked as Exhibit 2. Take a moment, look at each page, let me know when you're done.
Yeah, that would properly reflect the conversation that I had.
Is Exhibit 2 a true and complete copy of the message exchange that happened between you and Officer Bernhardt that day?
Yes.
The claim is that you misunderstood it, but yet you thought there was something there enough to at least report it, correct?
Absolutely.
And why did you think that was a quid pro quo instead of offering to exchange materials?
Well, obviously anyone who's actually going to take the time to read this would come up with the same conclusion. At least in my mind, any reasonable person would. I think that this was a terrible thing that this happened, but I'm not going to falsify a document and jeopardize my career, and I'm definitely not going to try to get on the bad side of my new boss, especially when I'm not even there.
Is prior to any of this, has Shane, if I call him Shane, no disrespect, Officer Bernhardt, I'm just kind of talking, right?
He's earned it.
Officer Bernhardt asking, has he ever asked you for DVD materials prior to this?
I can't really recall. There's some times that the officers do. If they don't, it was a normal practice years ago, and then of course the emails and things came out and the policies changed. But previous to that, I've always put on classes as he has, but those have always been an option in the past.
Why'd you report it? You like him, he's been around for 18 years.
Because I don't want to be suspended or fired or have anything. I did seek legal advice before I spoke to the chief of police.
Well, I don't want you to talk about what you talked with an attorney
Well,
about.
that's fine. I said, you know, this was the circumstance. Is there a probability that I would receive any punishment if I did not say anything? And they told me that I better just be upfront and honest about what happened, and then it is on them to decide what they do.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Officer Wilson, have you ever completed any training without attending a full training session with an instructor? Like the hands-on portion?
I can't recall if there was ever a time that I did.
Have you ever completed any psychomotor training by reviewing or watching training videos, PowerPoint presentations, or any other materials prepared by the instructor?
I don't believe so. I mean, during pre-basic, there's always videos that go along with TASER and different things. I mean, those are supplemental things in training. They're visual aids.
Okay,
So, like, that's the best I can say.
okay. As an instructor yourself, you've talked about this a little bit, but have you ever provided your training materials for your defensive tactics courses to an officer to review without attending a full training class presented by you?
I have given them DVDs according what is good with management. That's absolutely.
Okay, so you have done that?
Absolutely.
Okay. But you don't know if you yourself as the participant have ever done that?
I honestly, I can't recall of a time. I would do whatever, you know, they would put off the hours for, I suppose. Like, they're gonna consider them training, I would do that.
Okay. So, in those instances where you've indicated as a trainer, as an instructor yourself, that you have provided training materials to other officers, in those instances, what are the materials that you provide?
So it depends, there's a whole list of DVDs that are instructional based upon trainings that I've went to, which was like a Krav Maga, which is a Israeli fighting techniques. There's basically a step-by-step video that can go along with it. But as I've said before, in January, I normally put on 4 classes, then it's once every other month minimum. And there's still officers who don't go to the classes. So now it's become a thing that if they don't get to the class, they're gonna have to seek an alternative because we're not allowed to do the DVDs anymore.
So in those instances, let me back up there and have you clarify for me. When you say you're not allowed to use the DVDs anymore, is that based upon?
It's based upon the policy.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. And when you say policy, you're referencing an email
Yes,
by a former member of the department, Brooke McCain. correct?
absolutely.
But that was just an email with his preference, correct?
That isn't a preference.
Okay. How is policy established? Isn't there a formal way to establish policy?
I'm sure that there is, but when a chief tells you to do something and he wants it done a certain way, it's not a recommendation. That's taken as gospel. That's what he wants. That's what you do.
Sure. So as a supervisor, you're gonna.
I'm
or
not a
as-
supervisor.
No, as if you're getting instruction from a supervisor, you're going to take that, but that doesn't necessarily mean, there's a certain way to actually establish policy, correct?
I would assume so, yes.
Okay. So anyway, to get back to the question, you were referencing that email where he's
Yes.
directed that hands-on should occur rather than using the DVDs.
Absolutely, yes.
Correct? And I'd like to, does he have the exhibit in front of him? Do you have exhibit 1 in front of you, sir?
Yes.
Okay. If you could, referencing back on would be the last page of that exhibit 1. Could you just read that email?
The entire email?
Yes, please.
This was from Brooke McCain, Thursday, August 29th, 2019 at 4:20 p.m. It's sent to myself, Chuck, Shane, Alex, and Colin, which are all members of the department. This is from Chief McCain. I'm sending another email to clarify an issue that I thought I had already addressed. On March 9th, 2019, I sent out an email about psychomotor skill training. In the email, I addressed that we would use our in-house instructors and county-wide training sessions, and this gives our officers an opportunity for easy access to instructors and flexibility in training. To further clarify the above points, whenever a Delphi Police Department instructor is conducting any psychomotor training, they will notify all Delphi officers about such training. They will include training topic, date, time, location, sign-up requirements if needed, and any other required or special equipment needed. I think that we all need to be more accommodating in this. We need to make sure we separate our personal feelings from our professional responsibilities. Please contact me if you have any questions or need further clarification on this email. Do you want me to read the second page?
Sure, yes, and in fact, let me ask you something in reviewing this document. The portion you just read, do you believe, by looking at both pages, that was a follow-up to this next one that I was asking you to read?
The next one is not dated, so I can't say if it was
Okay.
previous or not.
But could you read the next one, sir?
It's labeled to me, Chuck, Shane, Alex, and Colin. This email is just to get everyone on the same page when it comes to certain areas of training. I know that the police department is now enrolled in Police One Academy training program. This past year, 2018, a couple officers used the Police One Academy for their defensive tactics training hours. From now on, or instructed otherwise, members of the Delphi Police Department will obtain their psychomotor skill training, firearms, evoc, and defensive tactics through our in-house instructors and county-wide training sessions. These skills need to be practiced and demonstrated in real hands-on training, in a training environment, This is why we will send officers to additional training to obtain their instructor status. This gives our officers the opportunity for easy access to instructors and flexibility in training. Please contact me if there is any questions or need clarification on this email. Brooke.
Is it your understanding, or do you know, sir, was Brooke McCain in 2019, when at least the first part that you read, was he the chief or was he a sergeant, or do you know what his position was?
I believe it was chief, depending on the time of the year.
Do you know, does he hold any other position or duties while when he was employed in terms of training?
When he first came to the police department, I believe that he was the first stops instructor class of the state. He was a defensive tactics instructor for a short period of time, I believe, and but that was before I became an officer here.
Okay. While you are an instructor here, while you've been an instructor here, and when Chief McCain was here, when you would complete would you complete training rosters?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do with those once you'd completed them?
I'd make a copy, send them all to the training coordinators of the departments, because I would train Flora, the sheriff's office, so would Officer Bernhardt. We're a small community of officers, so we train pretty much everybody. So we would just give them to the coordinators and they would submit them. I would keep a copy for my record. If the particular officers would want a copy for their records, I know that Officer Kent always wanted a copy for his records, but I think he was particularly just one that always wanted that.
Okay. And who was the training coordinator then for Delphi during
The chief was.
Okay, and that's okay.
Correct.
All right. So back to, so in this in particular, what seemed to precipitate this is this use of the Police One Academy for training hours. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what he reads. And can you explain a little bit further, what is this Police One Academy?
Police One is a secondary training tool that's online that the state okays for officers to get hours in their training, to get their 24 hours that are necessary to keep their state license for law enforcement.
Okay, and it's more of an online
Absolutely.
type training? Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so as an instructor yourself, you've indicated already that you had at some point in your instructor career, you have provided just training materials to an officer to review without
Absolutely.
actually attending training. So, and you talked about in those instances, the materials you provide are these DVDs, some with Krav Maga and
Yes.
other defensive tactics
Absolutely.
materials. Do you recall specifically what officers you're providing these training materials to in order for them to obtain their certification?
I believe Officer Parkinson, any officer, I can't really recall anyone specifically, but I would have a list of them. But I've given lots of them out to officers so they can get their 24 hours. They need to accomplish 2 hours hands-on, but if they wanted to watch the DVDs, they could get extra hours for those, but they need to accomplish the 2 hours.
Okay. And you just indicated in your prior testimony as well that you do this across the county, so you do it for other agencies, not just Delphi.
Correct.
And so specifically, have you ever provided training materials, as we've just discussed, to Deputy Toby Leesenby of the
Absolutely,
Carroll County?
yeah.
All right, okay. So he at some point has utilized your materials
Absolutely.
versus just doing the hands-on. How about Sheriff Tony Liggett? You ever provided training to him?
Oh, absolutely.
Provide your training materials?
Sure.
Separate from
Oh,
the actual
absolutely.
hands-on?
Well,
Okay.
well, they're in conjunction most of the time, but
Okay.
I'm sure that there's over 14 years of doing this. I'm sure that there's times that I have.
Okay. And you indicated likely members of your own department?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So there certainly have been times that you have provided materials only, where officers have not done the hands-on portion, but have to get training hours for whatever purpose, where you provided your training materials through these DVDs. to
Absolutely,
officers.
sure.
So in each of those instances, just to kind of go back so everyone understands the process, you as the instructor do you post your training? Kind of walk us through what you do when you're going to set up a class.
Basically, dependent on what people have asked for, what they're struggling with skill-wise. A lot of officers will come up and say, I have an issue with this or that, and that's how I'll base most of my training off of. Unless it's a new officer, which then you have to go by the Indiana pre-basic guidelines. And, you know, they have step-by-step of what they want to learn, for what they want you to instruct for the new officers to learn.
So once you hold a class, you have however many officers attend, and then let's kind of go back to this roster that we were discussing before.
Sure.
Is that a state form, or is it just something you type up?
Oh, it's a state
Describe
form.
that for us.
It's a state form. It has location, training officer, then it has a list of officers who have attended the classes, and when they come into the classroom, they will sign in for that they are attending the class, and we'll go through whatever they're struggling in, or basic fundamentals of defensive tactics.
So then on this form, you either handwrite or you type up on the form the officers who
Yeah.
participated?
Yep.
And then is there an obligation for you to sign off on that form?
Yes,
Okay. And what's the purpose of that?
it's checks and balances, accountability.
Okay. So you're signing off, verifying that these members participated in the training?
Absolutely.
Okay. Really just have one other question for you, sir. In your initial testimony, let's back up here. I'd like for you to review Exhibit 2, which I believe is in front of you as well. And there was specific discussion in reference to text messages between you and Officer Bernhardt on September 22nd, the day that you were going to have some surgery. And certain portions of that are actually alleged in the charging document that are here today, and I know I'm aware you're not responsible for that document. What I'd like for you to do, however, there's a couple pages on this, and these text communications between the two of you actually start on September, looks like September 11th. Could you just kind of read through those on the first page, what those text messages are between the two of you?
Sure. First part of it comes from his personal cell phone, from Shane. Keep me posted on how you're doing, my friend. If you need anything, let me know. And then I showed him a picture of my broken wrist. And then he replied, if you need anything, let me know, bud. And
So just from that, sir, on the first page. So would you take that as, so his initial reach out to you, was that because of this injury you had? He was just kind of checking in on you?
I would hope so.
Is that why you took that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so there was a little text exchange between you two on that. Was that unusual?
I mean, we don't text often, but like he had his son get involved in a car crash. It's not like I'm enemies with him when
Right.
like his son got hurt, I reached out to him. Like, we are all part of a big dysfunctional family, and, you know, like, it is what it is.
Certainly, so just kind of checking in
Yeah.
on you, how you doing?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so then it looks on to the next page, some additional text there. I think that just kind of is a follow-up of the last one, where he asked you if you need anything, let me know, bud, and then you respond back, will do, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so then it looks like then there goes to a separate date, next date, where there's some text that looks to be on this, correct me if I'm wrong, from Officer Bernhardt, and those are dated, well, the first one is dated September 12th.
Are you saying on the top left?
Yes,
with
on the
blue?
top
Okay.
left. And he says, I got you, bro.
Right.
Now, there's no communication from you either way. Do you know what that's in reference to? Is that in response to your one from the prior 2 days? Or do you know?
Well, I'm not the best on replying to text messages, so I'll probably respond in a day or two, and then he was responding to my text from a day later.
Okay, fair enough. And in fact, even if that one of yours was still on September 12th when the prior message was, it could have been he did a similar thing where he just didn't reply for a while.
I guess.
Okay. All right, so then we go down to the next one. That's kind of interesting. It's another text message from Officer Bernhardt, correct?
The one that says laugh out loud?
Yes. Do you know what that's in reference to?
Oh, yeah, I sent him a X-ray of a middle finger that was supposed to be humor because I broke my hand. So I thought everyone would enjoy an X-ray of that, so.
Oh, but that doesn't show up on this.
No, because it was like a, I don't know, if whatever they are, I have no idea.
Okay. So then if you can go ahead, it looks like the next texts are the ones that come from September 22nd. If you could just kind of read each of those communications for us.
From September 22nd. Okay. So you need evac, right? And I said, yep. And that was sent from my work to his cell. He said, I got a deal for you. I need DTs and you're probably not going to have a class, so I'll sign off on evac if you sign off on DTs.
And then the
And
next communications.
I said Nate would fire both of us for that. And then, let's see, it went to, or are you planning on putting one on and just instructing? He has a zip drive with some PowerPoints on them. And I said that I'm not sure when I'm coming back. I have surgery in an hour. Talk to Nate or Colin. If they say it's okay, there are DVDs in my desk. Watch one and bring me a roster and I'll sign off on it. And he said, okay. The only thing I'd like to comment is I live out in the middle of nowhere and my phone signal is not good at all. And this might come and enter it in this order, but I did back-to-back statements and then these came in. So, or we could have been texting at the same time.
Right, so you could have been texting at the same time. I
Correct.
understand that. I
Okay.
think, in this world, we all kind of know how that works anymore. Let me ask you, do you think typically texts are sometimes a little bit more difficult than just picking up the phone and have a conversation?
Oh, absolutely.
And do you think there's sometimes things that are lost when you're not just having a back and forth conversation?
Absolutely.
So in this string, we had only previously focused just on his text that says, hey, I've got a deal for you, I'll sign off on this if you sign off on this. And then there's the discussion about he's offering up some PowerPoints that he has for his
Correct.
course
Sure,
work, correct?
absolutely.
And then you proceed to let him know, I have the DVDs, which you've already testified about.
Absolutely.
You have the problem of God.
Yeah,
what you
common
use, right?
practice.
Okay, so in there, that you do follow up, and the final conversation is, hey, check in with the chief, essentially, I'm summarizing there. And if he says it's okay, DVDs are here, get it, and I'll sign off on it.
Yep.
And you specifically say, bring me the roster and I'll sign off on it,
Absolutely.
correct? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, sir, thank you for that. Question I have for you, you kind of in your testimony said you took this in black and white a certain way. You interpreted what you thought he meant. And I think you've testified you thought he meant to sign off without
Sure.
doing the thing, right? That's what you're, and you specifically said you would not do that because you didn't want to risk your career
Yeah,
or your
absolutely.
instructor. What, do you think that Officer Bernhardt would want to risk his career or his instructor status?
I'm not gonna speculate on what he does or he doesn't do.
Okay.
I mean, like, ask him.
Gotcha. I have no further questions, thank you.
Does the board have any questions? They would like to ask this witness?
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, I don't know what the procedure would be. I do have some.
Yes.
Redirect.
Yeah, redirect, please, yes.
Okay. Officer Wilson, do you guys, as officers, receive department-issued phones?
Yes,
And the purpose is for, to discuss department-related business on those phones?
correct.
Do most officers have private cell phones?
It depends on the officer. I'm
Oh.
cheap, so I don't.
Officer Bernhardt does though, right?
Correct, he has a personal cell phone.
Are your department cell phones, could they be subject to inspection and review?
It's
by
not
you?
our property, it's the cities. They can look at it whenever they want.
Did Shane send you these messages asking to exchange sign-offs for his personal phone?
Yes,
And when you sign off, is it under oath?
it's penalties of perjury.
I have no further questions, although to the extent necessary, I'm moving to admit the exhibits 1 through, 1 and 2, I guess.
No objection.
So now,
Yes.
if there,
Yes.
yes, thank you for the, does the board have any questions of this witness?
I do not.
Thank you.
I would respectfully ask that if you're gonna let me go that it ends my portion for the evening. I have other things to attend to. I know that this is serious, but I'm gonna need to leave. So if anyone's,
I don't intend on having to recall this officer, so you're released from my perspective.
I don't intend to call it.
do you want me to leave these articles here?
I'll take this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Officer Wilson, appreciate your,
Then I call, or Sergeant, I should say, Colin Deckard. Just to clean up.
Judge Decker, would you stand and raise your right hand? Sorry, I watched you do that. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you know it?
Yes, ma'am. Please state your full name and go ahead and spell it as well.
Colin Deckard, COLIN-DECKARD.
You're a sergeant with the Delphi Police Department?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been with Delphi?
A little over 10 years.
And what are your duties as sergeant?
I'm the first line of supervision for the patrolmen and assist the chief.
The organizational structure here, let me go ahead and understand that. How many officers total?
Currently, we are at 8.
Okay, and there's a chief, there's you,
Yes, sir.
so there's 2 of them. What about
And
the
then
other
there's
6?
a night shift supervisor that was recently appointed or hired, I guess. And then patrolmen, and then there's part-time patrolmen.
Okay, so there's 1 chief, 2 sergeants, and then patrol officers.
Correct.
Okay. You are aware generally of why you're here today, right?
Yes.
How did you learn about the complaint or the events that triggered this investigation?
Through the chief.
Remember the kind of the time, place, and circumstance?
I don't really recall if I was at work or where he advised me of it, but I know he had said that he had received a phone call or message from Officer Wilson, and then relayed that information to me.
And what information initially were you aware of? Like, what was the summary of what you learned about the case at that point?
That Officer Wilson advised that he felt Officer Bernhardt was trying to backdoor the training
So, did you have any description about what that was? The fact that there was a text message exchange, or what this referred to in terms of training?
Yeah, I don't, on the initial, I don't recall exactly how or what is said, but yes, I later learned about the text message.
So 8 police officers, certainly fewer than what would be on IMPD, right?
Oh, yeah,
Fair to say you don't have an internal affairs division?
that's correct.
And for that reason, did your department seek the assistance in any way, or did anybody seek the assistance from the government of third-party investigative services?
Yes.
Okay, and give me an overview of what you understood that to be.
I'm not sure who originally contacted the third party, but due to us not having that internal affairs section, somebody within the city reached out to a third party company to assist in that.
Do you know who the third-party company was?
I know the acronym was CSI, but I'm not sure exactly what it stood for.
Do you know what it was that that company did for you?
As far as I understood, they conducted the interviews of everybody involved and then supplied a written report. I think they also collected cell phones and conducted examinations of the department cell phones.
So there is a technology called Celebrate, right?
Yes, sir.
Just briefly, what is that?
It's basically an analyzing system used to extract data from cell phones.
And then turn it into a visible report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, have you seen the final report that was prepared by the third-party investigating service?
I did not see the whole report, but I saw the text message portion of the report.
Have you seen part of the report? Like if I were to show it to you, would you be able to identify it?
If I've seen it before, yes.
I'm handing you what's marked as 3.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does that appear to be the report that was received in response to this investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You just kind of keep it with you for now. Did you have that report before you did any investigation yourself into this?
Yes, this was turned into us, and then that's when we conducted the first initial interview.
Correct, so that Exhibit 3 has a date on it. It looks like it was Halloween, right?
Yes.
October 31st of this year.
Yes, sir.
And you did an interview with Shane Bernhardt at some point after that, right?
Yes.
You did 2.
Yes, sir.
When was the first one?
Make sure I.
And if you need to reference your report, just let me know you're doing that.
That's what I'm referencing copies. Looks like November the 3rd.
All right, so November 3rd, how did you initiate contact with Officer Bernhardt to talk about this?
I sent him a text message.
Did you ask to meet with him?
Yes, sir.
Did he come?
Yes, sir.
And once Officer Bernhardt arrived, where was that meeting at?
It was held in my office.
Here in this building?
Yes, sir.
Did you tell him why he was there?
Yes.
Did you explain the report that is referenced in Exhibit 3?
Yes, sir.
And just kind of walk me through the meeting from that point.
I just had to explain that